The events of today's story begin with the appearance of a school in one of the cities of Korea, to which a person from outside the country has moved. The teachers tell the students to pay attention. This young man joins us starting today. The young man says to them, "Nice to meet you. I am Yeo Jin." She moves from the girls to the girls' class. One of the girls says, "My big brother must be in class right now." One of the girls comes and says, "I saw a very handsome young man who just moved here." One of the girls says, "Could he be my brother? I never thought that my big brother, who we thought died with my father when the plane crashed, would return 10 years later." She remembers the events, the moment he arrived home. His grandfather met him crying with joy, "I have already lived." And she says to this person's daughter, "My brother, so you are in debt." One of the girls pulls her out of her dream and says to her, "Should you stop this habit, you idiot? You fell asleep daydreaming. I want you to give me your sports clothes during the physical training session. I brought them. It is true." The girl says, "Yes, but if I gave them to you, what would I wear?" You say to her, "Are you crazy? Do you think you have the right to respond to me?" She slaps him and says to her, "Feel free to feel in your place. Do you want to cry in front of everyone again?" The events move to her brother's class. The teacher tells them that he will join them starting today. He was living abroad for personal reasons, so I ask you to help him adapt to his new life. The girls say he is attractive. The teacher orders him to go to the empty place next to the window. One of the young men in the class says to himself why everyone was surprised to see this person. He seems to be just a pathetic, despicable person. This time he walks disgustingly. The young man tries to embarrass him on his first day, but he pays attention to his foot movement and is unable to bring him down and embarrass him on his first day. He says, "Really, I'm sure I put it in at the right time." Yoo Jin says to himself, "What does he think he is at this time? He stares at me, but remembers his commander advising him, while you live in Korea, try to avoid fighting." Yoo Jin says, "I know that, but how can I do that when my data about this place is not enough? But I am not so foolish as to act recklessly and get killed. Lyatin, I am a professional who has lived through his best fight for 10 years. He shouts at him, "Enough is enough. I'm telling you about this because I was worried about the opponent you will face." The events move to the classroom. The young man says to him, "Hold you. Why are you staring at me like this, you coward? Do you want to die?" The teacher says to him, "Why are you still standing there?" He apologizes to her. The young man says that he is terribly afraid of me. The teacher tells one of the students, "Park, are you taking care of him?" "Yes, ma'am." "Hello, I'm Park. I said your name is Eugene." He says to him in a whisper, "You must have been surprised a little while ago. You saw Lee putting his foot in front of you. The person who tried to set you up is called Lee. In our class there is Lee, and the person behind him is called G. Our teacher is not cruel, so be careful of them. We have mathematics now." Eugene is thanking him for the information. The mathematics teacher enters and says to them, "You have any questions? I will answer your questions as much as I can." Open page 47. Their teacher gives them the lesson. Eugene looks at the students happily playing outside. He remembers his previous life in which he lived. The first school day ends. He goes to wait for his sister, a big brother. "Were you waiting for me?" He says to her, "Did you want us to go together? Or do you have another plan?" She tells him no, but he interrupts him and says to her, "Then let's go home together, okay?" He tells her that you must be embarrassed. She tells him that she is not embarrassed. He tells her, "Don't hide your embarrassment. You must be a little embarrassed. I was 9 years old at the time of the accident, and I can barely remember some memories of you and my grandfather. The only thing I remember is that I have a sister, brother, and a grandfather." He tells her that it was difficult for you since you were 7 years old. One of the girls would show up angrily with her friends at any time. She told you that she would come, when she did not come until now. The boy looks at Dayan. His sister is surprised and says, "What am I going to do?" One of the people who was with the girl says, "Who is this?" She says, "The boy is being chased by Hyan." She says to her, "Who is that person?" Yoon. "Your boyfriend. I think you can date guys as well." Yoon says, "No, he is my brother. But she doesn't believe her. She says to her, how long have you had a brother? Your friend's brother says to her, yes, from the same class as me. One of the people who was accompanying her says, why is that bastard staring at me? If you don't want to die, turn your face away. That punk, with all his mental strength, is still staring. He says that Eugene is trying to start a fight. The young man tells his friends to slow down and goes to him, and says to him, didn't you hear what I said? You want to die. Are you trying to act nicely in front of your sister? Eugene says, but those who start fights are probably a little cautious. He approaches me while exposing all his body's weak points. He does not carry any weapon, even when he shows his lack of caution in this way. It is better to leave him alone, but the young man tries to hit Eugene. He says to him, do you think you can ignore? Yodayan interrupts them, apologizes to them, and says, my brother has been living abroad for a long time, and is not yet accustomed to the culture of this country. The young man says that when this vile person who lived abroad was staring at him, looking at his sister, he found her afraid. He hit the young man in his hand. He throws the bag aside and gives his sister the coat, and tells her to wait a little. Just a moment. The young man tries to hit him from behind, but Eugenie beats him severely. His friends could not believe what happened. Eugene says, it seems I broke my covenant with him. Leotin, on the first day, one of the young men appears, sweating, and saying, what the hell is going on? The events take us to the camps outside Korea. One of them, a lieutenant, says, didn't you say it was the day Eugene went to school? The lieutenant says he is. I trained him for half a year, but I am still worried. He has been in a place like this for 10 years, since the 9th year. I certainly hope he can learn. Well, the lieutenant tells them that he will definitely be fine. I tried it myself. After everything, he tells him, I think so. The events go back to Eugene beating the young men who tried to bother his sister. He says, I think I broke the promise I made to the lieutenant on the first day. He says his eyes rolled up. Did he lose consciousness with one blow? He beats the remaining young men and goes to the girl. She is afraid of them, and from the look of his eyes, Eugene says, what happened? I was just asleep for a moment. He says to his sister, sorry, I was surprised. Do you want to eat? Should I go buy some food? His sister says to him, it's okay. He says to her, okay, shall we go home? She gives him the coat, and the girl looks at him, and says, what the hell is it? That even the same person who was before goes home with his sister, and he looks at the girl. She gets nervous because of how much he looks at her. His sister says to him a little while ago, was I the person who did that to these two senpai? He says to her, yes. She says to herself, that is unexpected. He does rude in this country to look at people with an angry look. People can get emotional, as happened a little while ago. He tells her, even where I used to live, you had to be careful not to make eye contact. It could be dangerous. She tells him, then why did you do that a little while ago? He says to her, it seemed like they were causing you problems. She gets nervous while he was talking and did not tell him anything. He says to her, did I say something wrong? They arrive home, and Eugene prepares food, but his grandfather tells him that he will do it, and you have to eat some fruit. He prepares food for him and his grandfather, and not his sister. His grandfather tells him that the food is delicious. His sister says that he is trying to hide things, but he is happy to receive compliments on his cooking. Her grandfather tells her, did you enjoy the food? She says to him, yes. His grandfather asks him, how was your first day at school? Was there any problem? He tells him there was no problem. His grandfather tells him that is reassuring. They then go to sleep. He remembers that his grandfather was happy during his return home. He remembers that his grandfather prepared a lot of different kinds of food for him. His grandfather said, I wasn't sure what he would like, so I prepared a lot of kinds. I hope they will suit him. Eugene falls asleep and remembers during the plane crash. He gets up in horror and says, oh my God, it was a bad dream. His sister tells him, you are awake. I was about to wake you up myself. Ask her where my grandfather is. She tells him, he left for work at dawn. I took a few days off since you were. I have to go early today, so I'll go first. I left last night's leftovers on the table, so eat that. One of the girls appears and says, if you are saying that the young man who moved in yesterday is Dayan's brother. Yes, ma'am, he beat senpai. You tell him. Did they become like this from just one hit? Hyan asked you what happened. Well, will we be okay if we continue targeting Dayan? I was afraid of the galaxy looking at me. No, there's nothing to worry about. You say, since Heejin's brother is in the Alpha group from the 3rd year, the students are harassing Yo Dayan. Hyan says to her, stop exaggerating, you insolent little girl. Come with me. Where are you? Look at little Dayan. She is acting strong because she has a brother now. Shut up and follow me. If you don't want to hit me now, you kick her and tell her, didn't I tell you not to act forcefully? Your brother can fight a little. So little Dayan forgot her place and started to oppose us. But, my dear, now your foolish brother's school life will be miserable. Dayan says, what do you mean? Hyan tells her, do you know who your brother messed with yesterday? He messed with my brother. He'll probably now meet your brother. He gets angry with her and says, what are you going to do to my brother? She takes a page and says to her, who do you think you are shouting at? You insolent person? She starts crying while I hear that they are going to confront each other, and she quickly goes to her brother. We move to Eugene's classroom. Some young men throw some objects at Park. One of the young men asks Jimmy for his eraser. He throws it at Park, hitting his head and saying, this is how we do it. While they are throwing Park, Eugene arrives at the classroom and says, we will call this I after school. He says to me, okay. Eugene tells Park, are you okay? Park says, what are you doing in this school? You might want to come with me. I can take you on a tour to see the place. Rojan tells him that today I can go home with my little sister. Park tells him your little sister. Did you guys move together? Eugene says to him, my sister was already attending this school. Burke asks, her name. May I know her? He tells him that her name is Yu Deun. He says, bless the first year. Yu Deun. That is your sister. He says to him, do you know her? Not to be honest. Your sister's school life is difficult at the moment. He did not understand the news. He says it is difficult. Your sister has been popular since middle school because she is cute and has good grades in school, which attracted a lot of male students. But there was this girl who had feelings for one of these guys and started bullying Dayan because of that. He says that Eugene is a bully, and everyone just watched it happen. Your news tells him that it was because of her older brother, Kim Kisu, the top student in the 3rd year, 3rd grade. Oyen's life became more difficult after she was placed in the same class as that girl in high school. Apparently bullying has become such a thing that the students are surprised that she still comes to school. Eugene says that just because the boy she loves was attracted by someone else, they bullied her brutally. Park tells him that once you know the truth, it's nothing special. But people like that don't bully people for a special reason. Eugene remembers that Dayan told them that her school life was fine, and that there was nothing to worry about. He thanks Park for telling him, and Berkey tells them that it is a well-known story in the whole school. Anyway, she must be worried. Suddenly, they show the young men who beat them the night before. They say to them, what are you doing with us guys? One of the young men says to him that there is something they would like to do here. Concern appears on the faces of Lee and his friend Ji. They say, Kim Kisu, what is that person doing here? Damn, Kim Kisu is the only person I have trouble dealing with. Kin says to his comrades, damn, you were defeated by a damned person with such a pathetic appearance. I told you, we caught him by surprise. Kim says, you are a pathetic bastard who makes damned excuses. Kim calls Yu Jin-hee. You come here, he tells me. I don't know why Kim is acting like this. But that bastard is done. Eugene goes to Kim and says to him, you are Kim Kiso. He says, laughing, that is true. You know me, even though you just moved here. He says, no, his companions. What are you waiting for? Bring that damned person here. Suddenly, Dayan appears, and she is in a bad condition. Look, she is an errand girl. My sister bothers me with orders all the time. Kimo's sister appears and says that even I would be worried if my deliveryman got beaten. I'm sorry, brother, because of me. We tell her, don't worry, I just need an apology for you. I'm not the one who's wrong. It's him. He hits the comrades severely, knocking them to the ground, one of them in the face, the other in the stomach, and in their legs, until he reaches Kim. Kim says. Kim looks at him with contempt, and says, "What a dirty little bastard. Do you think you can just ignore me?" Then I try to hit him directly, but Eugene intercepts the blows. Eugene avoids them, returns the attack and hits him in the face with a strong punch, until blood drips from his nose. He repeats the blows on him more than once. His classmates are surprised and he tells me that even Kim was beaten. Even Dayan and Hyan couldn't believe what happened. They looked terrified. Hyan said, "Why? What happened?" Eugene goes towards her and she is afraid. She says, "What? Will he hit me too?" But his sister Dayan stops him. He says to her, "Aren't these people the ones who have been bullying you all this time? Didn't they bully you?" Dayan is ashamed of her brother and says, "How did he know about that? If he is fighting because of me again?" She says to him, brother, I am fine now, so stop this." He tells her, "Okay, let's go. I will walk with you to your class." The students are saying, "Damn it. What just happened? Did Kim Kisu's gang get defeated by one person telling me that I am? That transfer student is incredibly strong. He would have killed me if I had fought him." Eugene says, "But even these people would act differently sometimes. And that was only when their families were involved." Dayan told him, "Their families told us, yes." Eugene remembers when he was in the camp attacking the mercenaries and says that this always made me wonder what a family is and why it is so important. Dayan says to him, "But you barely remember me and my grandfather." Kim's sister comes in and says to him, "You idiots." The events move to Dayan and Eugene. She tells him, "I'm sorry because of yesterday, and today I was forced to get into a fight." He says to her, "What are you saying? Of course, I would fight wherever I lived. Most people were just thinking about themselves. No matter what happens to others, they won't care if it doesn't include them. I still don't remember much, but I know very well that we are a family. So now we have arrived in your classroom, and you have to enter." You say to him, "I will go now, bye." He goes back to class, but the students are surprised. He says to me, "You are absolutely amazing. What in the world did they teach you outside?" He goes to sit next to Park and tells him frankly, "I also think you looked great." The events move us to Kim and their gang. They seem upset about what happened to them. And that bastard says, "There is something different about him." Both Hala and the way he fights his sister tell them how long she plans to stay in this state, so she won't do it next time. He's only one person. Are you going to act like this because of one person who defeated you? Kim says to her, "Can you shut up? If you're going to keep gossiping, why don't you try to fight him yourself?" You say to him that one person defeated him, and now you take out your anger on Kim. He slaps her. She comes out of him angry and says that you are the person who was completely defeated by one person. After that, she returns to her classroom and looks at Dayan and says, "Well, aren't you lucky, Dayan? Now, you can come to school without any worries. You can simply run to your big brother if anything happens. Aren't you right, this bastard? Are you ignoring me?" She remembers Eugene's looks and says, "Now, just have to let her do what she wants. I will never do that again."